Welcome to another episode of the Brewing Fiction Podcast. Today I have the privilege of chatting with award-winning author and pediatrician Dr. Ronald Dwinnells. He's the author of the nonfiction book entitled Don't Pick Up All the Dog Hairs and a historical fiction novel titled 30 Days Have September. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Keith. I'm so glad to be here with you. Well, I'm glad I'm not in Canada, though, but not right now.
Do you guys get winter in what? Ohio you're in, right?
Yeah, we're in Northeast Ohio.
Okay, so you probably see winter, yeah?
Oh, yeah, we get year weather sometimes.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We're getting pretty close to some snow. I think it's in the forecast next week. Then we'll probably have it until March of next year. So
wow. It's supposed to get 79 tomorrow and Tuesday.
Nice.
Yeah. Don't
That's
know
good.
why.
When does winter set in Ohio?
Usually December, January.
Okay, so just
the rough months. Maybe February, but then it starts. Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, fair. I don't think you dislike winter a whole pile. I've seen you mountain climb. So you like outdoors?
Yes, I love outdoors.
I thought you did. Yeah. I was doing some background on you, and I noticed that number of mountains you've climbed and stuff like that on your website.
Right. No, I actually like to go. The closest one to Canada was Mount Baker in Washington State.
Okay.
And and I could actually see the lights of Vancouver. Because we're climbing it very late at night, early in the morning, and you can see the lights from a distance. And I actually have a really nice photo of Vancouver from Mount Baker.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So
it would be fabulous. All right, well, we're going to get started here. We're going to step into Author's Corner, and that's where I let you have a minute or two just to tell me a bit about yourself, about your mountain climbing, and all the other good stuff, and then we'll get into the podcast. So feel free.
Okay. Well, I'm a pediatrician, as you said, by education. I didn't function as a pediatrician for about 10 years of my career, and I had started what they call a safety net clinic in my hometown area. It's Youngstown, Ohio. And the safety net clinic was to provide health care for medically uninsured, underinsured types of people. And way back in the 80s, a lot of people could not access health care. Because a lot of doctors didn't take uninsured patients. A lot of hospitals would turn them away and so forth. So I created a clinic that acted as a safety net. So these people who couldn't go anywhere could come there. And that was, when I was very young and idealistic, and I liked to write way back when. So I wrote for a federal grant proposal to start a clinic like that in my area. And that's how I started the clinic. So from the first 10 years, I functioned both as a pediatrician, medical director, the chief financial officer, the chief executive officer. I wore all the hats, because we were relatively small.
Fair.
And then as the organization got larger, I had to back off, and I backed off on my pediatric practice and did full-time through the chief executive officer roles. So that's my professional aspect. The writing is kind of a hobby, Keith. It's not something I do, obviously to make a living. In fact, I give away my books because nobody buys them. But anyway, but I do it because I've always enjoyed writing, and so that's kind of a hobby, I guess, if you will. Other than that, yes, I have another passionate hobby of climbing mountains. Yeah, I've done all the Western U.S. mountains like Rainier and Mount Hood and Baker and St. Helens. I did all those up and down that West Coast there. Internationally, I've done Mount Fuji in Japan, Mount Elbrus in Russia, and Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. So, so we've done some very large mountain. My daughter and I did all the mountains, and my daughter, I have 5 children, and she's the only one that was kind of athletic enough to be able to do this with me. Sure. So we traveled everywhere, and she just finished her medical school in Michigan and is doing a psychiatry residency up there in Michigan. So but we haven't, needless to say, we haven't climbed mountains for 3-4 years because she's been in med school, and I don't want to do it myself in case I fall or something.
Right. Yeah. You definitely want to have somebody with you, right?
You need a partner. So, other than that, to keep in shape, I run a lot, I work out a lot, and it's primarily to keep in shape for the mountain climbs because
Right.
it's pretty dangerous up there. So yeah, so that's about the whole thing about my life in a nutshell, so to speak.
That's you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, and you've certainly lived life to the fullest.
Yes. Yeah. It's in that
Yeah.
first book about the dog hairs. That's yeah, that's a leadership book.
Yes.
Yeah, and I wrote it because I taught leadership classes at the local medical school here for
Okay.
about 25 years. And when they first asked me about doing a class for leadership for medical students and some master's programs that they had there, I had no idea. You know, you don't go to leadership schools. There's nothing. I don't think you can get a degree in it or anything. So I didn't really know what to say, and I started telling them my stories of mistakes that I made, the adversities that I've gone through as a leader, and what did I learn from it. And it turned out to become a really popular lecture series because they could all relate, and they love the idea of embracing mistakes and so forth. So, but I talk about a lot of things in that book, and one is live your life to the fullest. You know, have gusto in your life and those kinds of things, because that's
Fabulous.
important as a leader. You know, you have to stay in shape. You have to have a good mind. You have to be creative. Those kinds of
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
That's you in a nutshell, right? All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. Let's have a
Sure.
little bit of fun here with what I call Fast Five. This just lets us
Yeah.
get to know a little bit more about you that we may not find out in the interview questions. So, first of all, do you like coffee or tea?
Tea.
Tea?
Yeah, I was born in Japan, and you know they well way back when I mean I didn't drink tea as a regular, but that was the main fluid, so to speak, that you would drink,
Okay.
the Japanese green tea.
Yeah.
And but when we went to Africa and climbed Kilimanjaro, there's a lot of coffee plantations at the base of Kilimanjaro because it's the altitude aspect of where coffee beans can grow the best. So
Right.
anyway, they had this Arabica coffee, and it was so good, Keith. I mean, I didn't get addicted to it, but I so that kind of swayed me a little bit into the coffee world.
Okay. Okay.
But primarily tea is my drink.
Fair. I think you're like all of us, right? I mean, we've all you have one or the other, but we probably drink both at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Vinyl music or digital music when you're listening?
I'm an old dude. Vinyl's still cool with me. Yeah,
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 indeed.
yeah.
Do you have a record player
Oh
still?
yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yep. Have it in my office downstairs, and yep, yep. Love it. Oh
Love.
yeah, I can't. And I get all these albums from when I was a kid, and as a teenager and as a young
Yeah.
person. Yeah,
And they're all still in reasonably good shape?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I grew up primarily in the late '60s and '70s,
Okay.
and the best music by far to me was the '70s. Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Well, on that note, do you like the Boss or the King? Who is your favorite musician? Bruce Springsteen or Elvis Presley?
Oh, these days, Elvis,
Yeah,
for
you
sure.
would lean
Yeah,
more toward
yeah.
Elvis.
My
Okay.
mom loved Elvis. I mean, I was okay with Elvis, but it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. I've never been an Elvis fan. He was a little before my time, so I would have to choose Springsteen for sure.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably generational.
Definitely. That's why I had to throw it in there. I didn't know what you would have listened to. And
Yeah.
I mean, do you listen to more modern music, or because you have a record player with all your old records, do you kind of listen to the oldies?
You know what? I'm stuck in the '70s and maybe early '80s.
Okay.
A lot of '60s. I
Yeah.
actually like '40s too. In fact, a lot of times I find myself having the '40s stuff on, the big band and the female vocalists from
Mm.
that era when I write, because
Oh,
it kind
okay.
of, yeah, it transposes my mind. I don't know why. It's one of
Wow.
those
Okay.
things. Yeah, and I can almost like feel it. If there is reincarnation, I always wondered maybe I lived back then.
Maybe.
Because I love the style, the style of clothing. I love the way people acted. I love the way people dressed up. The music was just, it's very nostalgic for me. But
Nice.
yeah, so
Okay.
I like all kind. I don't really like any of the real modern stuff.
No.
I can't
Okay.
listen to it. It doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, it's different for sure. Pen or keyboard? So we're talking old school versus new school. Which do you prefer to use, a pen or a keyboard?
Oh, the keyboard.
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yep.
right. And for your writing, if you had a choice of a bustling cafe or a quiet library, where would you choose to write?
It really depends. Yeah, it really depends on my mood, or I can't even tell you what triggers where I want to be.
Hmm.
So right now. I'm in my green. I have a greenhouse that I had built that's attached to my main house. So I'm
Okay.
in my greenhouse. It's very quiet, very serene, and so forth. So
Yeah.
I do a lot of the writing here, but there are times where I want to hear noise. I can't say why or what triggers it or anything like that. But probably if I had to choose, yeah, the quiet, the serene, just so that I
Environment.
can think.
Okay. It's impressive. There's not many when I've asked this question, there's
Yeah,
not too many that can say, "Oh, bustling cafe." A lot would like to be able to, but
yeah.
what for myself, I need complete silence. Good for you to be able to do it in a noisy environment.
Well, and a lot of times the noise is somewhat stimulating. It might stimulate a thought or an idea or whatever,
Okay.
especially with the fictional writing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The other type of writing, the more scientific stuff, yeah, I need total quiet. So
Fair.
maybe that's what I'm trying to say is it depends on what I'm writing.
What type of writing you're
And
doing? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
think that's what it is.
I
Yeah,
love how you say, listening to say 40s and 50s will actually put you in a mindset for writing as well. Like, I know your novel 30 Days Half September. That one is historical, right?
yes,
So that would probably go well with music.
yeah, yeah. The one chapter is well, there's two, three chapters that's kind of transposed into that time era, and I found myself it's a subconscious type of thing, but I found myself having the '40s music on, and I could literally transpose myself, just my whole psyche into that time period, and I
Wow.
could feel it. I could feel it. I could sense it. Yeah, it was very odd.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, Ron, thanks for that. That was our fast
Sure.
five. And we'll see, it always stems a little bit more into conversation. We get to know you a lot more. So I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah,
Okay.
cool.
Yeah, I like it actually.
Good, good. All right. So let's start by asking what sparked that passion for your writing? I think you did your nonfiction earlier in your
Mhm.
career. And I know you say it's a hobby, but there
Mhm.
still must be something that sparked your writing. So
Well, first of all, I've always enjoyed writing. And we go back to as far as like high school. I remember in English class, we had to compose a lot of short stories and those kinds of things as assignments. And I found myself pretty much mesmerized by the writing. I really liked it. I didn't know I liked it until I took that class.
okay.
My parents always pushed me more towards the science stuff. So I had predominantly taken a lot of math and science classes. But, every once in a while we had to have the literature in English, and I really liked it. So that's kind of when I realized that I liked writing. And
Okay.
then I would win, little contests that we'd have at school and those kinds of things for writing. And then, and as I got older and uh, got into the medicine stuff, I was very interested in clinical research types of things.
Right.
So, and that requires writing. It's a different kind of writing scientific papers and so forth. But
For
I
sure.
still enjoyed it. And so the dog hair book came about through my teaching at the medical school. People would say, "Oh, those stories are so great. You should put it together. You should write it down." Anyway, those stories became handouts for my classes, and then the handouts eventually ended up as a book. So it's just a conglomerate of stories
Sure.
with meaning to it.
Okay.
So that's kind of my adventure there. But I've always liked writing stories, just stories for the heck of it.
Yeah.
And the fictional story of 30 Days Has September, actually that's based on a experience I had in medical school. So, and a lot of it are true events. For instance, the whole story is based on an actual person that I had met when I was a fourth year medical student.
Right.
And, one of the things that bothered me about medical education was that's all I learned. I learned a bunch of science stuff, a bunch of facts, and but you didn't really learn a whole lot about people, people's personality or what makes them tick or anything like that until around the third and fourth year when you started doing patient rounds, seeing patients and so forth. So anyway,
Yeah.
I had a situation in the fourth year of my med school class where I was doing an internal medicine rotation and for a month. And it did start in September, of 1982. That's a true part of it.
Okay. Yeah.
And this lady, and I went to school at Kentucky, and this lady came from Eastern Kentucky, which is a really poor part of the state. And anyway, so she came. I was the medical student who took care of her, who worked her up in terms of bringing her in and admitting her and so forth. But it turns out that she had a pancreatic cancer. And so those 30 days in September, I watched her digress from being a normal looking woman to her death. And she died exactly on the last day of September. So that part is true too. So,
Right.
but I learned a lot from this lady. And that's the first time I really learned things about more like life types of things,
Yeah.
people's feelings and thoughts. And yeah, I understood the science, but I didn't really understand how you really relate it to people, as a doctor. And so I got to say, she taught me a lot about just that part of medicine, which is, as I always refer to, it's the art of medicine. It's yeah, I
Right.
got all
Right.
the science, but I didn't get the art, and that's how you get the art is you practice it.
I'm speaking totally unknown. I speak as the patient. I
Yeah.
think every doctor should have that experience because the bedside manner of so many healthcare professionals leaves a lot to be desired. I don't judge. The medical field is not necessarily the easiest to work in these days, but just reading your story and hearing you talk about it today, I think everybody could use some of that learning. Yeah, it makes you a down to earth person.
Yeah, it's so true. That's a significant part of healthcare delivery is how you interact with your patients and how you explain things and so that they can understand and they can take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And that's part of the bad part of medical education is they don't really emphasize that. And I had many discussions with medical school professors and deans and those types of people, and they've said, well, they're guided by certain rules and so forth, and they have to have X number of hours of these types of didactic sessions in and so forth. So there's no room in those 4 years to
Fair.
get
Yeah.
into more of the patient stuff.
Yeah.
So but anyway, I was blessed, so to speak, to come across people like her. So that's how that story evolved. And I
Okay.
actually wrote it many years ago, and then I kind of put it aside and got busy with other things. Those
Yeah.
those types of.
And I was gonna ask you about that a little later, but I'll ask you now since we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Why did you finally feel it was time to publish it? What triggered that in
Yeah.
your mind to say, yeah, I want to share this now?
Yeah. Well, I had more time, number one, but I realized over many years, your brain kind of functions, it can function two ways, analytical side and more the creative side,
Yeah.
right? There's a left brain, right brain
Right.
type of
Right.
situation. And so I think I have the type of brain that can do both. But sometimes I have to focus more on my left brain, which is the more scientific, more business oriented type of thing. So
Yeah.
my organization, was pretty busy for quite a while. And in the last 3 or 4 years, it slowed down because I've gotten better people to work under me and
Right.
they've taken some of the reign and so forth away, so that's really good. So it allowed my creative side, my right brain side
Right.
to kind of, and then I just unshelved the books and started writing and realized how much I liked doing it. So yeah, so it wasn't any really, it was more of a availability of my creative mind that
Gotcha.
allowed me to
Okay.
finish it finally. Yeah.
Okay. So when you first shelved it, was it a complete novel at that point, or was it just basically ideas and notes and
Two
that kind of stuff?
thirds. It was about
2/3. Okay.
two-thirds done. Yeah.
Right
There
on.
were a lot of things I needed to put in there. I hadn't completed this. Well, I did complete the story.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
one of the,
because the story happened, right? So it was kind
oh,
of
yeah,
complete through
yeah.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it's, fictionalized too. But
Right.
yeah, when I write things, I always like to write the ending first.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I finished the ending of that book years ago. There's a letter in there by the patient to the medical student, and I wrote that probably 20 years ago because I felt it. It was one of
Hmm.
those things, and we did have encounters, and so. But I like to write the ending first, and if I write the ending, then I know what the story's about, so I can go
Right.
back and yeah. So I write the ending, I write the beginning, and then I write the middle.
Okay. I was just having a discussion a little earlier. I had a podcast a little earlier, and she was talking about the middle of novels are the hardest to write. So you had the ending, you have the beginning, and then you got to put it all together
Right.
to write the hardest part. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I hate fillers because I've read a lot of books where there's a bunch of fillers in, and they're
Yeah.
fillers just to get the word number up and
Right.
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate fillers. So, but yeah, sometimes you realize you are kind of filling in. So I try to have a lot of subplots in there, mini
Okay.
subplots, if you will, that still carries the story to from the beginning to the end.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say Jack Maisel is your protagonist? Is that you? Fictionalized you? Maybe?
Kind of. I wasn't
Yeah.
that bad though.
No, that's right, because he's definitely not
Yeah.
likable, and you are
No.
far from that. But so
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean the
Yes.
general idea is yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because the other thing I realized about writing is obviously you can write the best about things you know the best,
Yes.
right? So I know medicine well. I know me well. So yeah, and I know
Okay.
how I would feel in these situations and those kinds of things. But I
Fair.
wasn't that bad. Jack's a really bad guy. I actually,
He is.
he was really,
He is
really
that. Yeah.
he was worse than that, and the editors told me that I needed to tone that down a little bit.
Is
Yeah,
that true? Okay.
yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of my colleague medical students were like that.
I was just going to ask you if you met Jacks, in the field. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, and I don't know why. A lot of arrogancy. It's like they think they're above everybody because they're smart and they got into a highly competitive program, and they think that they're in the elite group or something. Not all of them. That's a generalization, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't like a lot of we just didn't mix.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I wasn't that kind of a guy. So
Well, thank goodness that the strong survive. If you want to classify that particular arrogance as strength, thank goodness that you were still successful, even though you're more down to earth than a lot of those guys and girls.
I was just trying to think for a minute if I know any of these guys from my class anymore, but I don't. My best friend actually flunked out of med school.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
There you
that's a whole different story.
go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We
It's
could.
actually it might be a novel one of these days. But
There you go.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's your next one. Yeah.
yeah. Right.
Okay. All right. For now, would you mind sharing a little bit about your writing process? So you're sitting in your greenhouse right now. It's definitely attractive for you for the mindset of writing, but why don't you share a little bit about your process generally? I know some days you may want to be elsewhere, but do you have
Yeah.
something you can share just for other writers like myself starting out?
Well, it's not structured at all.
No.
I don't like structure. In fact, in my work, even though I run the organization, I don't. I have the structure in my head, but in broad terms. So I'm not a detailed kind of guy, except for certain things like research or whatever. But the process is, I have an idea, I have thoughts. A lot of times, I'll just go and write it down, and then later I'll look at it. It might stimulate me to think through something and so forth. But like I said, if I know the ending of the story. It allows me to go back and just create a lot of stuff at the beginning. How do I want to start the book? And then in the middle, again, create various subplots that that follows the trending of the story to come to the end.
To
So
get you there, yeah.
yeah, and then in terms of when I write and those kinds of things, it depends. Most of the time I do it in the evening these days.
Do you?
But I
Okay.
like early morning too. I'm up very early in the mornings and I work out and stuff. But I don't have a process. I don't outline. I have the outline in my head,
Right.
but I
But
don't write anything down.
okay. So you're
Yeah.
more of a what we call a pantser.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, sure. That's the term that we like to use in our circle. Yeah, pantser.
Oh,
Right
okay.
from the seat of your pants.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's where it comes
Oh,
from.
thanks. Yeah, that's a good term.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
bet.
Yeah. So, I read a lot. So a lot of times I read the papers a lot, and I'm one of these people that read with a pen because I always mark it. I make notes and so forth.
Okay.
But I get a lot of ideas from what I read, those kinds of things, and sometimes just the ideas, just come.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll come during your workouts or during
Right.
mountain climb or whatever during
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
some ideas. I've woke up at 3 in the morning and had an idea and jotted
Right.
down. Right? Yeah, they just come.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool when it does
It
that.
is. It
Yeah, a
is.
lot of times when I cut the grass, it's really weird. There's a connection between mowing the lawn and ideas, and I don't know why. I think it's
Is that right?
because,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's
Okay.
mesmerizing or something, and
Maybe.
you hear the noise in the background, and you just, I always use a push mower, and an idea will come, and I have to stop, and then I have to go write it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and my wife would say, "What are you doing?" I had this idea. I have to write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get
So
it.
bottom line, I have no really structured process at all.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's okay. You still you were able to put it all together for 30 days for sure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, are you working on anything else right now?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I have the one I'm really focused in on right now is it's called Climbing Jacob's Ladder. And yeah, and it's a story about a child with severe disabilities, and based on a true incident. I took care of this child for about 10 years, first years of my career, and he really affected me in many different ways. And there's certain things I wanted to explore in the book, and one was, how when people are around disabled people or like severely disabled people, or when people are around like older people, they think that these people can't hear or understand,
Mm.
so they say things in front of them.
Almost like they're not there. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that happens a lot, and I saw this many times with this child. Like the nurses would say, "Oh, he's back again." How do you know? How do we know that these kids or anybody that's
Anybody.
severely disabled? How do we know that they don't have feelings? Don't that they can't perceive? Maybe not a strictly verbal way, but can they feel animosity or negativity? Can they feel that? And I always thought about that. That always bothered me because look at animals, right? Like dogs, they know uh, when you're angry or you're upset, or when you're happy.
Yeah.
So, and that's what they call the limbic system of your brain. So why wouldn't a child with severe disability, maybe they can hear and they can understand, at least maybe they can feel. So I bring a lot of that kind of concept up in the book.
Okay.
I wanted to kind of show the reader that, hey, is it possible that these kids know what we're saying and what we feel? And how do we know that they don't feel anything? So in the book, I personify the disabled child, and he speaks. So there's periods where he's thinking and
Okay.
narrating the book actually,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
and he keeps talking about how I just want to give my mom a hug, and I can't, and it makes me feel bad. How do we know that they can't think like
They
that?
aren't feeling all those things. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's part of the purpose of this book is I wanted to bring that concept out more. And anyway, so the story is again based on a real child that I had taken care of with disability. And the other concept that I wanted to bring out in the book is, how do we know that they they don't have a positive influence on other people? So a lot of people will look at disabled people, or they'll look at older. I always go into older people because I've seen this so many times.
Yeah.
And it's like they're thrown away. They're not really anything. And what purpose do they have in life? So in the book, I wanted to give this child, Jacob, a purpose in life. So even though he's severely disabled and has, he's basically kind of a vegetable. He sits in a wheelchair. He doesn't talk. He doesn't interact. How do we know that he's not capable of having influence on others, a positive influence? And that's the other thing that I bring out in the book is that he does have influence, and there's various things that happens along the way that shows that he influenced people in a positive way. And hence the climbing Jacob's ladder, it's based on part of the biblical thing, but a metaphor for each of the rungs that he climbs up represented a positive effect he had on people, a positive influence. Yeah. So that comes out towards the end of the book, where when the mother there's no secret, the child dies, and the mother gives a eulogy, and she brings that out in her eulogies.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that's the next book, and it's almost done.
Okay.
Yeah. It's about 95% done at this point. There's a few points that I have to clean up a
Sure.
little bit. Yeah.
So when you say done, does that mean it's
On
written
my
and
part.
edited, or?
No, on my part.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So then I'll send it to the editors, and then of course, they have a bunch of comments.
Yeah, of course. And some more changes and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's always for the good, though. I found that
Your
to be
experience
very
is
true.
that? Yeah. And you would hope it would be. Yeah, you do task those people to make us better for sure.
Right.
Okay. All right. So obviously you've written a lot of academic reports and papers and so on. Is there a difference in your mind, the writing process, and is one more difficult for you, say fiction versus academic? So kind of a two-part question, right?
Yeah.
Is there quite a difference in it? And also, which do you find more difficult?
Yeah, there's huge differences. In the academic papers, it is very structured, highly structured. It's all the same. It's an intro, methodology, what the research is about, and then results and discussion. So there's
Sure.
different categories. So it's very structured. And it's no personal pronouns are used, those kinds of things. It's very third person type of thing. And
Fair.
it's a whole different mindset in terms of how you're right. The fiction obviously is there's no rules,
Right.
is the
Yeah.
way I look at it.
Yeah. I 100% agree. Yeah.
You can create anything you want. You can create situations, dialogues, situations, plots, subplots. So there's no rules. So I guess this is the second part, is which is easier or harder? It depends. The academic papers aren't difficult to write because it's pretty well outlined and structured.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just a different style of writing. And then the fiction obviously is a different style. So I can tell you that I love fictional writing a lot better than the nonfiction book that I wrote
Okay. Yeah.
and the scientific paper. It's a lot more fun. It uses my creativity a lot better.
Right.
So
Which you
yes,
haven't used a lot in your career, right? Obviously, you
right.
use the other side of your brain. So I can see
Yeah,
that. Okay.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So it's almost like I got unleashed, like
Yeah.
let him
Yeah.
go, and
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
it's kind of fun. Yeah.
So there should be lots to come from Ron now, right? Because
Yeah, I have
now
no
you're going to have a lot more
ideas.
time. You're going to retire, and you want to use
Yeah,
that
yeah.
creativity.
Yeah, yeah. I have a lot of ideas. There's one book that I've been working on, and I shelved it for now, on homeless people. So a lot of it is related to my experiences through
Of
medicine.
course. Write
Yeah,
what you
but
know. Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, but the homeless one is pretty good so far. It's called Shakespeare House. Another long story on that one, but and then I wanted to write one on. I'm calling it "Just Push Me."
Just push me.
Just
Okay.
push me. So when my daughter and I were climbing mountains, I would say things like, Abby, my mom ended up with Alzheimer's, and it was really a bad process towards the end. And my
Right.
father-in-law had Parkinson's, and that was a bad process towards the end. And that was during we were climbing one of the mountains when that was happening, and I told my daughter, I said, Abby, I said, if Daddy gets this way, just push me.
Mm.
Because I don't want to live that way. I don't want you guys to know me that way. I don't want to live that way. Like, just push me, and I would
Yeah.
love to just be in the mountains, be frozen or something for 1,000 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, a few years later, I started thinking about it. That's a terrible thing to say to your daughter. Like, just push me. Like, oh, okay. But and she played along. She said, "Sure, Dad. Yeah, I'll push you." But anyway, I started thinking about it, and I thought, it's somewhat kind of related to, like, almost like a suicide thing.
Mm.
Like, okay, kill me. If I get in a bad way, just kill me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I thought that would be a really interesting thing to explore, like what leads a person to want to
Yeah.
have this, destroy themselves and so forth. And what's the discussion? What would the discussion be like? The arguments and so forth between somebody that loves you and don't want that to happen to you, and So anyway, I was going to
Wow.
explore that. That might be kind of interesting.
Yeah. It sounds like it could make a great novel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just push me.
Just push me.
I'll let you know if I get to it.
Okay, you do that. You do that. Yeah. So, in 30 days, you span over a lot of time period, and I know
Yeah.
in the novel you bounced from when you started in Germany and you go to Kentucky, different years, 43, 82, so on. How did you keep that clear in your mind? And also, how did you have a specific way in your writing to be able to make that work? Most stories are just straight timeline, but it can get a little muddled if you're bouncing to and from, to and from. I didn't find that in yours. Did you have a technique to make sure that didn't happen?
No.
No,
Uh,
it just worked out.
yeah. Well, I guess I think what happened was, as I'm writing, I found when I write, I do a lot of editing. So when I first write, I write basically the ideas without
Yeah.
any grammatical structure or anything, just a bunch of ideas. And then
Okay.
I go back and I edit that, and then I make it into sentences and paragraphs and so forth. And then I probably edit things 20, 30, 40 times over and over and over again. It's almost an OCD with it. It's really weird.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but when I do read it, I realize that, how do I connect this to that, and or this situation with that situation? So I end up creating new chapters to explain that. So a good example is in that 30 Days book. So when I the first draft, my wife read it and she says, "So why is Jack so mad?" Well, I never really explained it.
Mm.
He's mad because I was kind of using my former medical school colleagues as a model. They were kind of mad a lot of times. I'm not
They
sure why.
seemed to you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I said, well, I don't know why he's mad. He's just a mad guy. A lot of med students and a lot of doctors are like that. They're just not very nice sometimes. And she says, yeah, but he's like really mad, and he's a mean guy. But why is he so mean? So I started thinking about it, and I thought, okay, well, he's mean. He's in Kentucky, big horse country there. So that's how I came up with that whole fictionalized thing about that, that he had this horse that he loved, but his mother was one of these domineering women, and she kills his horse, and ever since then, it just affected him, his psyche. And yeah. So, but it blended in okay. And then there's a mountain climbing scene on Kilimanjaro with Agri, Jack's best friend. And Agri was actually a real person I met in Tanzania.
Okay.
And yeah, and I modeled this character after him. But I wanted people to know who Agri was and why he was so worldly, and why he was so responsible compared to Jack, because he had life experiences, whereas
Right.
Jack never did. Jack came from a rich family, and his parents told him what to do and how to do it and so forth. So
Right.
so it just kind of all fit in. Some of the chapters were developed out of necessity because I realized there were spots that were void, and I needed to fill that void with an explanation. So that's how that came about.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome. So your wife kind of was your beta reader, we'll say,
yeah,
kind of helped you with that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
She reads all the time, and so she reads like 5, 6 books a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
I wish.
So yeah, so she's a good critic.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
Yeah.
I didn't ask this question. Self published or traditional published? Which, both your books, which are they?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had no idea about the publishing world at all.
Right.
And people said, when I first started looking into it, they said, oh, you got to get an agent. I'm like, oh, what the heck's an agent? Well, the agent ties you in together with the publishers. So I looked, I wrote a bunch of letters and never heard anything back from anybody, and I thought that's kind of weird. And then, anyway, I was having a meeting with some marketing guy that wanted to do business with me at the office. And he had written a couple of marketing books, and he went through Greenleaf Publishing, and he says it's great. And he explained to me there's three broad different ways of getting your work published. One is self-publish, second is the traditional, and third is the hybrid. And he says this Greenleaf is a hybrid model, and basically you work with them. You pay some fees up front and so forth. They work with you, and then and you own everything. You own the copyrights. You own. So I like that. I like that idea, and I had a creative role in it. I gave them the ideas of the design of the book covers.
Okay.
Those kinds of things. So
Okay.
so I like that idea, and so I guess to answer specifically that question, I would say that I like this hybrid model.
Hybrid model. Okay.
Yeah, I don't really like the pure self-publishing thing because I like working with editors and the various editors and the publishers, and or at least this Greenleaf seems to have a pretty good team of people that
Okay.
supports your work.
Yeah.
My understanding, I guess there's all different levels of self-publishing, but I kind of like the quality of the books look really nice, those kinds of
Okay.
things. So,
Yeah. Okay. So that's the hybrid model is your preferred of the three. Yeah. So did you have an agent, or does Greenleaf actually take all of that as part of their role?
yeah, right. Yeah, I could never get an agent. Nobody ever responded. It's like,
Interesting.
I didn't know how you found an agent or how you find them because nobody ever responded back.
Yeah. No, that's fair. At least you found people to send emails or letters to, but I mean, I wouldn't even know how to search for them. So I've heard a few people talk about the hybrid model, though, and
Yeah.
it sounds like it may be an option for aspiring writers.
Yeah, it's basically like a menu, so you can pick what you want help with. So
Oh,
like
okay.
yeah, so if you wanted like just a regular editor, not a developmental editor, you could do that, or you could get the developmental editor and the other editors,
Yeah.
that kind of you could have them do the marketing for you. You pick out the design of your books, so it's a menu type of structure, and there's fees attached to each of so you can do it very cheaply if you wanted to, or go with
Yeah.
the Cadillac version, those kinds of things.
Okay. Yeah. You could build your basket basically
Yeah,
based
yeah,
on what they offer. Okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah. But most importantly for me was it's always mine.
Your
Um,
creative control.
yeah,
Keep your control, right?
right. And I've known people who went through the traditional route, and they said, well, they basically buy your book and they own it. So they can change your title, they can change, some of the themes in your book. And
Yeah.
I didn't want that. I just wanted somebody to work with me. So,
Fair. Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Well, Greenleaf. I'll keep that in mind. So, where can listeners find your work?
Well, the usual. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
wherever books are sold, I guess. Yeah.
And it's available obviously in ebook and in print, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, sir. And you have a website as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they can go there.
It's just rondwinells.com.
Right.
And yeah, if you just type that in, it just suddenly appears.
We'll find you. Yeah. We can always find
Yeah.
you.
It's got some mountain climbing pictures in it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I found out that you were amazingly, not just mountain climbing, but like the mountains, right? You're talking some of the biggest ones. So. Ron, it's been a pleasure. I know you're a busy guy, so I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about your writing journey and your books. And
Well,
hey, maybe we'll do it again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When the next one comes out, let's do it.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's pretty interesting. It's really interesting to write.
It is, hey? Yeah. Well, it sounds like it. Like I'm a very emotional guy. I like emotional stories and emotional writing. Now, I write horror and suspense, so I'm detached from my emotions when I do that, which I enjoy, but I'm a very emotional guy, so like your stories to me pull at my heartstrings, and there's a time when I need that and I want that. So, and that's what Climbing Jacob's Ladder sounds like for me. It's going to be another, a heavy read in a good way.
It is. Yeah. The eulogy I wrote many years ago, and the eulogy really fits because I needed to know what the mom thought, and that's how I wrote it. But a lot of metaphors in it that it's not like that deep, but it's very metaphorical, and I think I had to make it that way because of the storyline of a disabled child.
Right.
So, we can talk again.
We will do that. I'd love to talk about it when you publish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Fabulous.
Hopefully within the next few months, but.
Okay. Good. Well, we'll stay in contact, and I will make sure to update our listeners on the website, and then we'll chat again. Let's do that.
Okay, that sounds really good. Yeah.
All right, Ron. Thanks so much again for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Keith. Yep.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.